Okay, I'm going to get started this morning by welcoming everyone. Welcome to Wat Tung. Nice to see all of you guys here. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. Today is what we call our Pali Canon and English study group, which I'll help you guys to understand what that is a bit later. What we do each class is we start with meditation. This individual who we refer to as the Buddha figured out how to get to enlightenment. What enlightenment is where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. By the time you get to enlightenment, you no longer experience any discontent feelings. You will have eliminated all the causes and conditions that are producing things like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All of this can be eliminated from the mind through training the mind. Oftentimes people think that these feelings are coming from something external and that other people are causing you to experience these feelings, but this isn't actually true. You can see it through the independent verification of the teachings of the Buddha that it's actually your own mind that's causing these feelings. This is why you can eliminate them. So meditation is an important part of that, but you need much more than just meditation to be able to train your mind to get to this enlightened mental state. So we're going to start our class with meditation, and then afterwards I'll share with you guys more teachings of what the Buddha actually taught. If you'd like to join for meditation, the way that we start is we start with some chanting. This helps us to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. If you'd like to chant along, we have chants over there on the cabinet. You're welcome to help yourself to a chanting sheet, and you're actually able to chant along because as you chant, it actually helps you to get more benefit out of the meditation itself. During the lifetime of the Buddha, he used chanting as a way to help his students commit the teachings to memory. Every 2 weeks, his students would come together and they would recite his teachings orally. So chanting was used as a learning tool, as a learning device. So you can see from the origins of chanting that this isn't a rite, ritual, ceremony, worship, or prayer or anything like that. There's none of those kinds of things in the teachings of the Buddha. If you're seeing those kinds of things associated with his teachings, those aren't his actual teachings. Those are misunderstandings that people are having. Instead, he taught you to train your mind, do this inner work, this inner growth, this inner development, becoming a better and better individual. It's not about rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, or prayer. So if you decide that you would like to chant along, you'll be able to experience improved benefit as you ease into meditation. If you end up getting one of those sheets and you read the English translations, you're going to see a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for the Buddha. And because of this, I don't think the Buddha even created these chants himself. They were probably created by his students, either during his life or after his death. Because the Buddha wouldn't have gone around and said, here, chant these chants that I created in order to respect me, in order to show me appreciation. He wouldn't have done that because by the time you get to enlightenment, you don't have ego anymore. You don't think of yourself as being above people or below people. So he wouldn't have created chants and had his students chant these chants to him. But if you learn from a teacher how to move from anger, sadness, frustration, and all these other discontent feelings to the peaceful and joyful mental state that is enlightenment, and this teacher didn't want anything from you or expect anything from you, they were just helping you out of the kindness of their heart, you might actually have a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for that person too. So that's why I think these actually came from his students, either during his life or after his death. Once we're in the meditation, I'm going to be providing some guidance where I'm going to be essentially teaching you how to meditate while we're meditating together. Then there's going to be a period of time of quietness where we're all meditating. Everyone here at the temple and anyone joining online will just all be meditating at the same time. Now, during this period of time of quietness, I'm sure you're going to hear occasional sounds. You might hear a car go by, a dog barking, a bird chirping, someone here might cough or sneeze. This is all normal. If you are in meditation with a craving for permanent silence and you hear a sound, you will cause your mind to be annoyed or frustrated. This is the reason why the mind experiences these discontent feelings, is because in the unenlightened state, the mind craves permanence, wanting things to be a certain way, expecting things to be a certain way, where in reality, we live in an impermanent world. Things are constantly changing, but the mind craves for things to be permanent. So these sounds that you're going to hear, they're going to arise, change, and they're going to fade away. And if you understand that, you can be in meditation and at ease, because when you hear a sound, you're like, well, of course, that's the way the world works. The world is impermanent, and there's not going to be a time where you're going to experience permanent quietness while you're meditating. So you'll hear sounds as we're meditating. After the period of time of quietness, Then there's going to be the chanting to come out of the meditation. And then that's where I'll start today's class, helping you guys to understand some of the teachings of the Buddha of how he taught how to train the mind to get to this enlightened mental state. In terms of your body position for meditation, there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught: seated, lying, standing, and walking. And you would learn these different positions at different times as part of your journey to enlightenment. It's kind of like having a tool belt, and you kind of invoke the various tools that you need as part of your journey, because your body can't be in the same position permanently because we live in an impermanent world. So you need these different positions at different times, almost like a tool. Oftentimes people are learning in the seated position. So I'll teach you guys a little bit about the seated position, at least introducing you to it. And you can use whatever I'm sharing with you if you like, but also you can use something that you found on your own, because there isn't just one fixed way to actually sit during meditation. Again, that would be permanence. Everybody's going to find different things to be comfortable. So what I'm sharing with you are just suggestions or recommendations that you're free to use if you like, but you could also use something that you figure out on your own as well. What's important is that the body is comfortable, not painful and not luxurious, but comfortable. So you could be sitting on the floor in a chair. Maybe if you're at home, you're on a bench or a sofa or in a wheelchair. You can sit however you like. If you're on the floor, you might consider having some cushions under your rear. This will help soften your seat. And then if you're going to bring your legs together in the cross-leg position, you might decide to do that lightly. Whereas if they're real tight, it can impede the circulation and cause pain in the lower body. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets your hips up in the air, and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, allowing the circulation to flow. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable for you, you could use it. But again, it's not about everyone doing it exactly the same way. There's other options here as well. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or their knees. Some people put their palms up. Some people rest their hands comfortably in their lap. And then the same thing is true for anybody who's sitting in a chair or a bench or a sofa or a wheelchair. You can also sit however you like. Some people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles, but you can see me sitting in a chair here with my legs crossed, so that's an option for you as well. And then you can put your hands and arms wherever you like. In terms of the upper body, it's helpful if this is erect, with the sternum up and the shoulders back. It'll help keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. What meditation is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities of the mind and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities in the mind. So you'd like the mind to be attentive and alert during the meditation so you can actively train it. Whereas if you were slouched like this, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you're real rigid with the upper body, the mind could be overactive or uptight. So you like the upper body to be erect with the sternum up and the shoulders back, because not only does it help you to keep your mind attentive and alert, but it makes it easy for you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. So I'm going to start with this chanting. You guys are welcome to join in, as I mentioned, and then afterwards I'll come back in with the guidance to help you. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakewa Wat Tung Mahakewanang Apiwateyami Savakato Mahakewata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakewato Savakasangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสเอมะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมโมโนสกาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสรังพุทโธภาควาติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. ระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาพุทธังมหาเขวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสรังพุทโธภาควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, good morning to all of you guys. Nice to see everyone here this morning. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. This individual who we refer to as the Buddha figured out 2,500 years ago how to get to enlightenment. What enlightenment is, where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. You no longer experience any discontent feelings. The mind will be incapable of experiencing things like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All of this can be eliminated from the mind through training the mind. The Buddha figured out that there's these 10 individual pollutions that are in the unenlightened mind, and he figured out the tools and the techniques of how to uproot these and eliminate them out of the mind. And as you do so, your mind starts performing more and more optimally. You'll notice that you have focus, concentration, clarity, and deep memory. Because in the unenlightened state, when you have these pollutions in the mind, you'll be hindered from those qualities. You'll lack focus, concentration, clarity, and memory. You'll notice by the time you get to enlightenment that all your personal and professional relationships are really blossoming. Because in the unenlightened state, you'll have a certain amount of bitterness, harshness, and hostility in the mind, and you'll put that out in your relationships. And you might even think that you're justified in treating people that way because your mind might think that that other person is causing you to be angry, where in reality it's the mind itself that's causing itself to be angry. But the mind lacks that wisdom in the unenlightened state. It firmly believes that other people are causing you to be angry or frustrated. So that bitterness and harshness and hostility that you're putting out, it just keeps coming back to you. You can look in those relationships where you have struggles and difficulties. You can see that when you're bitter and harsh and hostile, those people are bitter and harsh and hostile to you too. And you can actually clean all this up, where you can be loving and kind in all situations. You can get to a point where you're not even in a bad mood anymore, that it's physically impossible for you to experience a bad mood. So meditation is an important part of that, and that's why we start each one of our classes with meditation. but there's more that you would need to know than just meditation. One of the biggest myths about the life story of the Buddha is people think that he sat under a tree, he meditated, and then he instantly got to enlightenment. And this just isn't true. It took him 6 years to actually get to enlightenment. And it was through gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress that he actually was able to attain enlightenment. And you know this to be true because everything you've ever done in life has been that way. Whether it's to read, write, or speak certain language, it's been gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. Same thing with any job or occupation where you maybe have a special skill or something like this. It's been gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress that has led you to that. So after we do meditation and all these different programs that I teach, I share the teachings of the Buddha that are going to help you to be able to be guided to enlightenment. But the teachings of the Buddha aren't based in belief. So you're not believing what it is that I teach you about his teachings. You're not believing a bunch of things and then hoping something good happens when you die. Because with belief, you don't know what's true or false. You're just believing it because either someone convinced you to believe it or you convinced yourself to believe it. In order to get to enlightenment, you need to cultivate wisdom. And the way that you cultivate wisdom is you learn something intellectually through investigation and examination. Then you reflect on it to verify, is this true or false? Because you can independently verify the teachings of the Buddha. Then you would like to practice his teachings, integrating them into your day-to-day life. And this is how your mind starts to be transformed, that your wisdom starts to be cultivated to the point where your mind is now functioning more and more optimally. So in the various programs that I have, I help students to, in some of the programs, lay a really nice foundation in the teachings of the Buddha. We have something called the group learning program, which meets each Sunday and Wednesday. And on Sundays, I go chapter by chapter in this book, helping students to be able to understand the foundational teachings. This is volume 1 of our book series, and you can actually get this for free. You can download it from our website. You can take it and go print it. You can get printed versions here by just reimbursing us for the printing cost, or you can order it on Amazon if your country has access to Amazon. So this is the best place to start. And on Sundays and Wednesdays over a 7-month period, I gradually walk students through to be able to help them to understand. And the way I usually do that is I teach for 15, 20, 30 minutes. I open up for questions. I teach another 15, 20, 30 minutes, open up for questions, a more traditional style of learning. And then I have various courses and retreats that students can learn in as well. Like next week, Monday through Friday, we have a course that is called The Foundation and the Path to Enlightenment. It's 9 to 3 p.m., 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., where you can gradually be learning the teachings over that 5-day period that really helps you get started with the foundation and the teachings of the Buddha. This afternoon from 1 to 4, it's just a 3-hour course. It's called Introduction to the Teachings of the Buddha, where I'm going to be helping you to understand what the teachings of the Buddha are and what they are not. And then I'm going to be sharing his very first teaching. His very first teaching is called the Four Noble Truths, where in 4 simple statements, you can understand the problem that he discovered in your mind. He explains the cause, the elimination, and the path forward of how to actually fix it. So this afternoon, that's a great place for someone who is maybe just getting started to understand the teachings of the Buddha, is this Introduction to the Teachings of the Buddha course. This particular program is called the Pali Canon and English Study Group, where what we do is we explore all the other volumes of our book series. We have 13 books, and in this program, we explore volumes 2 through 13 over a 1.5-year period. And we do this more as a study group as opposed to the way I teach all the other programs, which is a more traditional style of learning. So what the Pali Canon is this is the original source teachings of the Buddha. They're in 45 volumes of books that are this thick. And what our book series does is it consolidates it so students can approach it and learn it and understand it in a way that they can then glean the benefit of having learned and practiced the teachings of the Buddha. So oftentimes before someone comes into this type of program, they will have already established a foundation in our other programs. But if this is your first time here, which I'm sure many of you guys it is, then it's fine. You'll learn plenty today, but just understand that there's other programs that are kind of like a nicer start for you to really help you lay down a foundation. So the way that we do this program is a little bit different, like I mentioned, than the others, where the others I teach for 15, 20, 30 minutes, open up for questions, another 15, 20, 30 minutes, open up for questions. What we do here is I invite students students here at the temple and anybody who's joining through Zoom to be able to read a chapter from the book. And these chapters are very short. Usually they're kind of like a half a page or something like that. These are the original words of the Buddha, where he actually spoke during his lifetime. And then shortly after his death, they actually documented his teachings. And we refer to that as the Pali Canon. After a student reads the chapter, I will then share some teachings on that to be able to help you guys understand how to integrate this into your life and really get benefit out of it. Because the Buddha teaches very clear, very concise, and very precise. You don't need to interpret his words or figure out what he's saying, but it does help to have a dedicated teacher, dedicated practitioner who's actually done the work to train their mind with his teachings to kind of guide you through and help you see, almost like a tour guide of pointing out the things that you need to understand. So that's what I'll do after someone reads this. Then I'm going to open up for questions based on whatever it is that you saw in the teachings of the Buddha, anything that I share. I'm going to open up for questions and see what questions you guys might have. So if you're here at the temple and you would like to volunteer to read or ask a question, we have microphones there in the middle of the room in the white bowl. We also have some up here as well. All you need to do is get a microphone, take it back to your seat, press the gray button. You'll see the light comes on. You can hold this up to your chin and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online as well. If you speak here without a microphone, they won't be able to hear you online. And then if you would like to keep this microphone with you, you're more than welcome to, because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question and you can just share it with them. And if you're not using it, if you could press the gray button again, that'll help us so that we don't get feedback through the speakers by turning the microphone off. And then anybody who's in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, you can put your questions into the comment section and I'll be able to see that and I'll answer your question. Or if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and ask any and all questions that you like that way. And you can also volunteer to read if you're in Zoom as well. So this first chapter is actually a chapter that I don't typically read as part of this program because I teach this in the foundational programs. This is actually the core central teaching of the Buddha. It's called the Eightfold Path. You can see here that it's got quite a bit of content. It's about 2 pages long. I actually teach this little by little in our foundational programs. It takes me about 2.5 hours to teach this entire teaching. So usually by the time students get to this point, they've already explored this in all the foundational programs with me. And when we get here, I just kind of help students to see what questions they might have related to this particular teaching. But since I know many of you guys are new to the teachings of the Buddha, or at least studying with the original words of the Buddha, I'll point out a few things here with his Eightfold Path that I don't typically teach as part of this program, but I'll just kind of help you guys to understand. So this Eightfold Path, this is 8 individual factors. This is the path to enlightenment. This is how you actually train your mind to get to this enlightened mental state. And there's 8 individual factors that he's teaching you. And this is his original words of how to actually learn and understand and practice this, because there's many places in the world that claim what they're sharing are the teachings of the Buddha, but their resources and the reliability of the translations and the things that they're sharing isn't necessarily the original teachings of the Buddha. When you learn this particular version of what the Buddha taught, because this comes from the Pali Canon, and I know that these translations actually work, you'll see that it works for you too. And what he does here is he documents and explains how to actually get to enlightenment. So that's why he says, "And what, monks, is the noble truth of the way practicing leading to the elimination of discontentedness?" Because that's how he actually taught, and that's what he taught, is everything the Buddha taught is about how to eliminate your discontentedness, how to train your mind to get to the point where you no longer experience anger, sadness, frustration, and other things. And he says that it's this noble eightfold path, which are these 8 individual steps: right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. These are the 8 individual factors. It starts with right view. Here with right view, what he's actually doing is he's pointing to another teaching. He's pointing to the Four Noble Truths, which is what I'm going to be teaching this afternoon in the introduction to the Teachings of the Buddha course. This is where in the first noble truth, he explains to you the problem that each unenlightened being experiences is that you experience discontentedness. You experience conditioned feelings, that based on some condition, you then experience a feeling. What this is pleasant feelings, painful feelings, or neither painful nor pleasant. So for example, if you look outside and you see it's sunny outside and you get happy about that, that is a conditioned feeling. That based on the condition that the sun is present, you will then experience happiness. The problem with this is that if you base your happiness on the sun is not permanent. So that means that your happiness is not permanent. This is why you haven't been able to get to permanent happiness and permanent joy in your life, because the unenlightened mind continues to form its feelings based on external aspects of life. So if it's sunny outside, you'll be really happy, but then when it rains, you'll be sad or frustrated. Or if you get really happy when your bank account balance is up here, that means when it goes down here, you'll be sad or frustrated. The only thing that's happened here is change. That's it. The world is full of impermanence, but the mind in the unenlightened state craves permanence. So the problem that the Buddha discovered that each unenlightened being is experiencing is conditioned feelings, that your mind's going up and down and up and down and up and down. That maybe you have peace and some calmness here and there, but it's only a matter of time before you become irritated or annoyed or frustrated about something. That's what's called conditioned feelings. That's the first noble truth, explaining to you that that's the problem that each unenlightened being is experiencing, is the mind's all shaken up. And oftentimes people kind of relegate themselves to thinking that this is the way that the human existence is. Well, of course you experience anger and frustration and all these other feelings like stress and anxiety. You've experienced those all throughout your life, and you've come to the conclusion that this is normal, and people just kind of accept this. But what the Buddha has done is he's figured out this better way of life of helping you to understand how to get to the point where you can evolve as a human being to this higher consciousness, and your mind doesn't need to experience those feelings any longer. But because these teachings aren't pervasive in the world, the vast majority of the world doesn't even realize that this is an option for you. So people tend to relegate themselves to thinking that this is the way that the human existence is that you're just going to experience stress and anxiety for the rest of your life. And then typically what people do is they blame that on other people, is that you'll tend to think that it's other people that are causing these feelings for you. So when you're feeling anger and frustration and all these other feelings, it's very painful for you. And what the mind will tend to do is push people away. You might have pushed away your friends or family out of your life, thinking that that's going to solve your problem. But that didn't solve your problem, because you still get angry, you still get frustrated, you still get annoyed. Or the second thing you'll do is you'll tend to be bitter and harsh and hostile towards people through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. This is the mind thinking that this other person is causing your anger, and the mind is growling and roaring, almost like an animal at another being, trying to fear them into doing things your way. Or then the third thing the mind will do is it'll tend to put its expectations on people and try to pressure them to do things your way. So this discontentedness feels uncomfortable for the mind, and it doesn't understand why it's experiencing it. The mind in the unenlightened state firmly believes that these feelings are coming from something external. Maybe your mom or dad, or your brothers or sisters, or your life partner, or your coworkers, or your boss. You think that maybe these are the people that are causing these feelings for you. But it's physically impossible for someone to insert a feeling into your mind. It's physically impossible. That's all coming from what's going on within your own mind. So the Buddha brings to your attention in his very first teaching of right view that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. That's what the second noble truth is helping you to understand. That it's craving, desire, attachment. It's craving for permanence. That the mind craves permanence while it lives in an impermanent world. So for example, think about a boyfriend or girlfriend that you came together with. Maybe when you guys first got together, you were so happy or excited about this. And when you guys first got together, you were getting what you wanted, what you expected. Maybe they were inviting you to the movies or going to dinner, or maybe you're going to have nice walks in the park and have great conversations. Maybe you were having intimate contact as well. And now you got all these pleasant feelings. But over time, the relationship fell apart. It deteriorated, and now it fell apart. And now maybe you're angry or frustrated or lonely or bored. This wasn't your love that was causing this. This was the mind holding on and craving permanence. As long as the mind gets what it wants, then if it gets happy, it gets those pleasant feelings. But if the mind doesn't get what it wants and what it expects, it experiences painful feelings. And when the mind's craving permanence and holding on to this person, wanting them to be in your life permanently, as long as you're getting what you want, which is them in your life, there's a certain amount of comfort. But when you experience this impermanence, this change, the mind doesn't like that. it experiences painful feelings. This is why if you've had someone close to you that's passed away, maybe like grandma or grandpa or mom or dad or brothers or sisters, maybe friends or other people like this, when they died, that grief and sorrow that you experience, it wasn't from your love. It was the mind craving permanence. As long as grandma and grandpa were alive, the mind was getting what it wanted. So it had a certain amount of happiness there. But when they died, the mind experienced the painful feelings because it was holding on and craving permanence. The only reason why grandma and grandpa died is because they were born. They were born, so they had to die. This is just change. And the whole world is full of change. But the mind doesn't understand that. I'll give you an example that doesn't involve relationships. Maybe you can see this a little bit clearer. Because remember, the teachings of the Buddha aren't based in belief. You can't believe what it is that I'm sharing with you. You need to independently verify this for yourself. Think about if you maybe brought a brand new car and you were so excited about this brand new car. This was like the perfect car. You've always wanted this car your entire life. And now you finally purchased it after saving up all this money. And now you drive it off the parking lot. You're so proud of your new car. You park it at the store and you go inside to buy something. And when you come out of the store, there's a scratch on your car. Oh my gosh, you might be frustrated. You might be so annoyed and angry. It's not the scratch that's causing it. And it's not the person who scratched your car. That's not what's causing the anger. What's causing it is the mind is craving permanence. The mind craves for this car to be permanently beautiful. Now, we're not talking about what's wise or unwise, because obviously when we walk through a parking lot, we aspire not to scratch anybody's car. But the fact is that this car is going to deteriorate. It is impermanent. The paint's going to fade. The tires are going to need to be changed. The upholstery is going to get ripped and torn. This is normal. This is what the car is going to experience. But if your mind is craving permanence and wanting that car to be permanently beautiful, when you experience this impermanence, which is the scratch, your mind's not going to like that. It's going to get angry and frustrated, not realizing that you live in an impermanent world. So the mind craves permanence in the unenlightened state, thinking that you should be able to get certain things that are permanent, where in reality, everything around you is constantly changing. You can see this if you maybe went to the airport. Maybe you were so excited to come to Thailand. You just couldn't wait to get here because you know they have mango and sticky rice. They have massages. You can go play with elephants and all this other stuff. Maybe you're so excited to get here and you showed up to the airport ready to check your bags in, and the person at the ticket counter says, "I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry, ma'am. You can't check in yet. Your airplane is delayed. It's going to be a 3-hour delay. You're going to need to wait." And if you notice the anger coming up in your mind, that's not from the airline company. They're not causing that. What's causing it is your mind's craving permanence. The mind wants every airplane to take off on time, especially the ones you're on. Everyone else's plane can be late. You don't mind about that, right? But it's your plane. You want it to take off on time. And now when the mind's experiencing this impermanence, now it gets angry or frustrated. Because the fact is that there's going to be a maintenance issue with this plane. If you travel enough, you're going to experience that. Or there's going to be a crew issue where maybe the crew doesn't show up or something like this. Or maybe there's a weather issue, a weather delay. If you travel enough, it's only a matter of time before your plane is delayed because the world is impermanent. But the mind craves permanence. So I could give you example after example after example, but you need to be able to see this for yourself. So don't believe what I'm sharing with you, that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. Look at it yourself. You could have a breakthrough here today where you could actually see once and for all what's causing these feelings. Look at a recent time where you've been angry or sad or frustrated or some other discontent feeling. It could have been this morning or yesterday or last week. What was it that your mind wanted? What did you expect? What were you longing, yearning for? And if you would have gotten it, you would have been happy. But because your mind didn't get what you wanted and what you expected, your mind was angry or sad or frustrated. If you can see this, you'll be able to see what's truly causing these feelings, because then you can actually fix it. That's the beauty, that because your mind is actually causing these feelings, you can actually solve it. You can actually fix it. Whereas if it's everybody else that's causing these feelings, you can't fix it because you can't change other people. But that's what the mind will tend to do, is it'll tend to go out into the world trying to change other people, where in reality, you need to change your own mind. If you change your own mind, you can get to peace and joy. So the Buddha didn't teach a bunch of rules and commandments and say, if everybody follows these rules and commandments, the world will become a better place. That's not what he did. He explained to you the way the world is. He explains to you the way the world functions and the way your mind functions. And by understanding that, you can now work with your mind skillfully, and you can transform it to the point where you no longer experience anger and sadness and all these other feelings. But it starts with right view, where you can see for yourself that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. Because if you didn't understand it was your own mind causing these feelings, why would you do any other work on the path to enlightenment? Why would you meditate? Right? You're already perfect. Everybody else is the problem. They should be here learning the teachings of the Buddha, right? But what the Buddha brings your attention to is that it's your own mind that's causing these difficulties and struggles. You can look at your life and see whenever things were changing in your life, those were the times that were the most challenging for you. When you were changing living locations, when you were changing jobs, when you were changing relationships, those were the most challenging times in your life. Because one of the ways to say this is that the mind craves permanence. Another way to say it is that the mind does not like impermanence in the unenlightened state. It doesn't like change. It doesn't like impermanence. Even when you're making the decisions to do this, when you're choosing to change jobs, when you're choosing to change living locations, when you're choosing to change relationships, your mind doesn't actually like it because it craves permanence. But you can transform all of this. That's what the third noble truth explains. The third noble truth explains that you can eliminate your discontentedness by eliminating the longing, the yearning, the craving, the wanting and expecting things to be permanent. And the way that you do that is through the Eightfold Path. That's the fourth noble truth, helping you to understand that there's this path, there's this training that you can employ in order to be able to help you transform your mind. So once you understand right view, then you go on further to understand each one of these individual factors. And ultimately you get to the point where you understand each individual factor. And as you implement this in your life more and more closely, this is what's going to produce more and more of the enlightened mental state, where you'll see more and more of the qualities of enlightenment start to shine through. So one of the ways we say this is that it's attaining enlightenment, right? But another way to say it is that your mind is already enlightened. You just have these pollutions in the way that need to be removed in order for the mind to experience more and more of the qualities of enlightenment. It's kind of like if there was the sun and there was clouds in front of the sun sun is always there. It's just that you can't experience the rays of the sun because the clouds are in the way. So when you peel away the clouds, the rays of the sun can shine through more and more and more. The only difference with the analogy here with the teachings of the Buddha is that as you peel away these pollutions, the qualities of enlightenment will shine through more and more and more, but those pollutions will never come back. The clouds will eventually come back and actually cover the sun again. But with the enlightened mind, once you eliminate these pollutions, they will never come back. You'll continue to experience the peace and joy, all those qualities of enlightenment for the rest of your life. So do you guys have any questions on the Eightfold Path and what it is? And I know that, like I mentioned, I usually take 2.5 hours to teach this, but I thought I would just kind of touch on this one aspect of right view, because these other parts of the teachings of the Buddha with the Eightfold Path, not only does he teach you this wisdom section, he teaches you this moral conduct, because there's a certain amount of unwise moral conduct in the unenlightened state where you're being bitter and harsh and hostile. He's teaching you through your speech, actions, and livelihood how to not cause harm. And then he has this mental discipline section, which is teaching you how to discipline your mind so that then you can control your mind. Because in the unenlightened state, you can't actually control your mind. That's why you're angry and frustrated and feeling stress and anxiety, because your mind is uncontrolled. But what you gain as you progress on this path and training your mind is you gain the ability to completely control your mind 100%. By the time you get to enlightenment, there's no anger that arises. There's no frustration that arises. The causes and conditions that produce this have been eliminated out of the mind, and now the mind is completely peaceful and joyful. So any questions on this Eightfold Path and kind of how it fits in to the overall teachings of the Buddha? Let me see if we have any questions online here. Okay, I don't see any questions online and I don't see any here either. Okay, so now let's kind of do what we normally do with this Pali Canon in English study group, which I'll invite you guys. By the way, what you have here is you have the words of the Buddha. You have a reference that takes you back to the original source teaching, so you can see where did it come from in the original Pali Canon. And then you have words from me that are helping you to understand how to integrate this into your day-to-day life. That's what all these books have, and you have access to all of this. Okay, so now let's do what we normally do in this Pali Canon English study group, which is I'll invite someone either here or online to be able to read this, and then I'll share some teachings on this. This particular teaching, it looks like it's about 1.25 pages. And if somebody reads this, then I'll share some teachings on it, then I'll open up to any questions. So is there anybody here online that would like to read this? Nobody would like to read? Oh, Rachel? Okay.
Where earth, water, fire, and wind find no footing. Once, Kavada, in this order of monks, the thought occurred to a certain monk. I wonder where the 4 great elements, the earth element, the water element, the fire element, and the wind element, are eliminated without remainder. And that monk attained to such a state of mental concentration that the way to the heavenly realm appeared before him. And that monk attained to such a state of mental concentration that the way to the heavenly realm appeared before him. He went to the heavenly realm of the 4 great kings and asked the question. When none of them could answer the question, the monk went to the 33 gods who said, "We don't know, but Saka, ruler of the heavenly beings, may know." Saka told the monk to ask the Yama heavenly beings, the Suyama, the Tusita heavenly beings, the Santusita, Nimanarati, Sunimita, Paranimita, Vesavati heavenly beings, Vasavati, Brahma's associates, and all the way to the great Brahma. The great Brahma avoided to answer and finally said that the heavenly beings believe there is nothing Brahma does not know, but the truth is he does not know where the 4 great elements cease without remainder. It is the monk's fault that he did not ask the perfectly enlightened one. In the end, the monk went back to the perfectly enlightened one. So that monk, as swiftly as a strong man might flex or unflex his arm, vanished from the Brahma world and appeared in my presence. He prostrated himself before me, then sat down to one side and said, "Venerable Sir, where are the 4 great elements? The earth element, the water element, the fire element, and the wind element, eliminated without remainder." I replied, "Monk, once upon a time, sea-traveling merchants, when they set sail on the ocean, took in their ship a land-sighting bird. When they could not see the land themselves, they released this bird. The bird flew to the east, to the south, to the west, to the north. It flew to the zenith overhead and to the intermediate points of the compass. If it saw land anywhere, it flew there. But if it saw no land, it returned to the ship. In the same way, monk, you have been as far as the Brahma world searching for an answer to your question and not finding it, and now you come back to me. But, monk, you should not ask your question in this way. Where are the 4 great elements, the earth element, the water element, the fire element, and the wind element, eliminated without remainder? Instead, this is how the question should have been put. Where do earth, water, fire, and wind find no footing? Where are long and short, small and great, fair and foul? Where are name and form wholly destroyed? And the answer is, where consciousness is quieted, immeasurable, all radiant, that's where earth, water, fire, and wind find no footing. They're both long and short, small and great, fair and foul. There, name and form are wholly destroyed. With the elimination of consciousness, this is all destroyed.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. So this is the reason why this isn't necessarily the best place for students to start, because this teaching here needs other understanding for a student to be able to truly understand it. But I'm going to help walk you through some things that you haven't necessarily been exposed to be able to understand what it is that the Buddha is teaching here. So first, there's this monk that is asking this question about where does earth, water, fire, and wind, where are they eliminated without remainder? These are the four elements, and this is how they used to describe the physical body during the lifetime of the Buddha. They would describe it through this traditional method. And nowadays, there's actually traditional medicine approaches and systems that actually still use this. So here in Thailand, the traditional medicine, they actually diagnose through these four elements, where today we have things where we talk about bacteria and viruses and cells, and we talk about all kinds of other more scientific ways of explaining the physical body, where 2,500 years ago, they didn't have that understanding. So they actually used this traditional system of earth, water, wind, and fire. And this system actually works really well. You can actually still use it today. What the earth element is all the solids of the body. So like the hair, the teeth, the fingernails, things like this, the bones. This is the solids of the body. Then the water element are all the liquids of the body, like tears, urine, pus, saliva, things like this, the blood. This is the water element. Then the fire element are the temperature of the body, usually associated with digestion. There's a certain temperature that the body has. Then there's the wind element. The wind element is the movement of things through the body. So for example, the water element, that's the blood. The blood is part of the water element, but the movement of the blood through the vein, that's the wind element. Or say like when you eat food and it goes into your colon, the food itself is considered the earth element, but the movement of that through the colon is the wind element. So when people would understand the physical body in this way, they would diagnose someone as maybe having a depleted earth element, maybe a increased water element, a neutral fire element, and maybe a depletion of the wind element. And this is a certain diagnosis. And now based on this diagnosis, they would use herbal remedies in order to be able to balance out these elements, because balancing out all the elements is an individual who would be healthy. So if you have an increase or a decrease of one of these elements, the body is not healthy, it's not sick. So they would use herbal remedies to be able to balance out these elements. So whenever you see them talking about these four elements, they're talking about the physical body. The other way that you'll know this is down here where they're talking about name and form. This is another part of the teachings of the Buddha where he talks about the physical body, and this is related to the physical body. So what this person is talking about, and what the Buddha is encouraging this person to ask their question about, is where do earth, water, fire, and wind find no footing? What they're talking about is how do you get to a point where you don't continue to experience life over and over and over again? Because what the teachings of the Buddha are doing is guiding you to the point where your mind is enlightened and you experience complete peace and joy. You've eliminated discontentedness, but also as part of that, an individual isn't going to be coming back into the world and experiencing rebirth over and over and over again. Now, you guys heard me share at the beginning that the teachings of the Buddha aren't based in belief. This includes the cycle of rebirth. You would never be interested in believing in the cycle of rebirth, that there's no belief in the teachings of the Buddha. You can actually independently verify that we have multiple lives. Right now, you might be believing you only have one life, but you don't have any evidence that you only have one life. It's just that maybe right now you can't remember your previous lives. But if you've ever had deja vu, which is where you're experiencing a certain situation and you know that this feels very familiar to you, but you never did it in this life, this is your residual memories from your previous lives bubbling up to your mind. In this book series, in volume 11, chapter 105, I have 17 different criteria of how to independently verify the cycle of rebirth. So you can see that it's true, but that's not where somebody starts. That's why it's in volume 11, chapter 105. But what the Buddhist teachings are helping you to do, among other things, is get to the point where you're not having to come back and experience life over and over and over and over again. Because coming back into this world means you're going to continue to experience sickness, aging, death. You're going to be experiencing discontentedness like sorrow, grief, pain, and displeasure. Where getting to enlightenment, your mind is completely peaceful and joyful for the rest of this life. And now you can experience that peace and joy. Here, this individual, they kind of start out talking about the heavenly realm up here at the beginning. It's important to understand that that's not the goal of the teachings of the Buddha. The goal of the teachings of the Buddha is not to live a life, this life, and then be reborn in the heavenly world, because the heavenly world is not permanent. The heavenly world is impermanent, just like all these other places, like this human realm. We are impermanent. Beings in the heavenly realm are not permanent. You can see the world around you is constantly changing. But oftentimes people teach that somehow the heavenly realm is permanent and this is an ideal existence and you should aspire for being existing in the heavenly realm. But those beings are actually still in the cycle of rebirth. They're continuing to experience the discontentedness over and over and over again, and they're going to need to get to enlightenment. So while they're starting out talking about the heavenly realm, that's not the ultimate goal of the teachings of the Buddha. But this student is talking to the Buddha and asking him, how do you get to a point where you no longer experience the rebirth? That's what he's talking about here, where he's saying, where do earth, water, fire, and wind find no footing, right? And where name and form are wholly destroyed. Name and form is the physical body, right? So what the Buddha ultimately gets to in his answer, he says, where consciousness is quieted, that's where there's no longer any rebirth. Because right now in the unenlightened state, your consciousness, your mind is not quieted. That's why you experience all those random thoughts and you have these things that are going through your mind constantly and maybe getting to the point where you're kind of obsessively thinking about one thing or the other. But by the time you get to enlightenment, your consciousness is quieted. It's completely still. You still have thoughts in the unenlightened state, but instead of a bombardment of thoughts and lots of thoughts, always wanting to go do this and go do that and jump here and jump there, the mind is having a thought. And then there's quietness and stillness in between your thoughts. So what he's saying here is when you train your mind to get to the point where your mind's quieted, that's where the name and form, that's where you're not coming back into the world over and over and over again. Because if there's a mind, if there's a consciousness, it's going to have to find a body to be able to come into the world. So if you can eliminate the consciousness, then you eliminate the rebirth. And that's what he's essentially getting to here. With the elimination of consciousness, this is all destroyed. The way that you might think about this is that if you have a fire and it's got logs on the fire, the logs on the fire are the fuel. When there's fuel on the fire, it's going to send off sparks into the air. And the wind is going to carry that spark and it's going to land. And when the spark lands, it's going to create a new fire. It's not the same fire as before. It's a completely new fire. So as long as there's fuel on the fire, there's going to continue to be sparks and there's going to continue to be new fires. But when you get rid of the fuel, there's no more sparks, meaning there's no more fires, right? So the consciousness is the same way. If there's pollution in the mind, these pollutions that the Buddha discovered, then that means those are the causes and conditions that are producing the next life. It's the next spark. So that spark is craving, desire, attachment. The mind's longing, yearning, wanting and expecting things to be a certain way. If you have this longing, yearning in your mind, as long as that's there, then the mind's going to produce another consciousness. So this longing, yearning, this craving, desire, attachment that we're talking about, it's where the mind chases. It's like an unquenchable thirst. The mind is like, I don't feel good here. What do I need to feel better? More money. That'll fix everything. Let me get some more money. So now the mind chases after that for a while. And if you get your more money, you're happy, but then eventually it fades away and you're back in the anger and frustration. And then the mind's like, what do I need to feel better? A new boyfriend, a new girlfriend. That'll fix everything. Let me get one of those. So now you'll chase after that for a while. And you'll get your new boyfriend or girlfriend and you'll be really happy and excited. But then that fades away. You end up back in the anger and frustration. And then the mind's like, what do I need to feel better here? I know what I'll do. I'll go to Thailand. That'll fix everything. Let me go to Thailand. And now people maybe chase and run and go to Thailand. And then you're really happy and excited here when you're eating mango and sticky rice and getting massages and playing with the elephants. But then you got to go back home and your mind's like, oh, I don't want to go home, right? And now you're back in the anger and frustration again. So the mind in the unenlightened state is looking for some external object in order to be able to complete you and feel this inward satisfaction. But you won't ever experience inward satisfaction by basing your feelings on external objects. But the mind doesn't understand that. So it keeps chasing and chasing and chasing and chasing. And if the mind's not chasing after the objects of its affection, it'll swing all the way to the other side where it's dull and lethargic and complacent. So the Buddha is teaching you to be able to come to the middle where you can gradually pursue your goals, objectives, or interests through wise decision making with ambition and enthusiasm, but without craving, desire, attachment, without basing your inner feelings on whether you get that thing or not. But that's what the mind does in the unenlightened state. And that's really all you know is to chase after things. And if you get what you want, you're happy. And if you don't get what you want, you're angry or sad or frustrated. But because you live in an impermanent world, you're not going to always get what you want. So as long as you have this craving, desire, attachment in the mind, that's the fuel. That's the logs that are producing those sparks. And now it's going to produce the next consciousness. And if there's a new consciousness, it's going to need to find a body, and now it's going to come into the world. So by eliminating the causes and conditions that are sending off those sparks, by eliminating the fuel, you'll eliminate continuous rebirth. But ultimately, what the Buddha is teaching you to do is to eliminate discontentedness. But we understand it's kind of like if you are eliminating discontentedness, you're also eliminating the causes and conditions that produce rebirth. So the Buddha never uses rebirth as a way to guilt, shame, or fear you into learning and practicing his teachings, but he's just helping you to be able to see the cause and effect relationship between training your mind and what that's going to produce. And one of the beautiful things about the teachings of the Buddha is in this life, as you're training your mind, you'll gradually see the improvement. Where oftentimes people are believing a bunch of things and then hoping something good happens when you die, the teachings of the Buddha aren't that way. You're learning, growing, and developing in this life, and you're seeing the improvement to the condition of your mind in this life. And you can see your mind becoming more and more peaceful. You can see your life becoming more and more joyful because you know situations where you were angry and frustrated. And when you're in those same situations, after having trained your mind with these teachings, and you see your mind's quite peaceful and joyful, you'll know it's these teachings that are actually leading to that improvement. So while that's what the Buddha keeps you focused on, there are these teachings as well to help you understand this rebirth, that by eliminating the causes and conditions that produce discontent feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others, you're also eliminating the causes and conditions that produce rebirth. So you don't need to keep coming back to experience sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair over and over and over again. So he's explaining by eliminating the consciousness, you eliminate the rebirth. Because if there is no consciousness, if there is no mind, then it's not going to come back into the world. And then in all of his other teachings, he explains to you how to eliminate all the causes and conditions that are producing discontentedness, which is also what's producing rebirth as well. So any questions on this particular teaching here? I know this is like getting pretty deep, and it's not like I mentioned where someone typically starts, but at least you guys can understand a little bit of this perhaps. Anything you guys would like to ask questions about here? Yes, sir. If you could get a microphone back there, the people online will appreciate that. If you press the gray button, you'll get volume there.
Oh, thank you, Master. Thank you for sharing this teaching for us. We all know it requires a high level of samadhi. We can achieve the name and form destroyness, and we will find where the nirvana exists. I want to know is what is the purpose of nirvana, and why we will practice this way into the nirvana. What's the purpose of that, and what's the purpose of our enlightenment? Thank you.
Sure. The purpose of getting to enlightenment is to eliminate all your discontent feelings so that you'll no longer continue to experience anger, sadness, frustration, and all these other feelings. When your mind's experiencing those feelings, it's like a red light on the dashboard of your car alerting you that your mind still has pollution in the mind, right? So when you're angry and you're frustrated, that's showing you that your mind is not yet awake, that your mind is not yet enlightened. And now, what would you do if you were driving a car and the red light on the dashboard comes on? Is you would kind of pull over and you would get your car checked out. Either you would lift up the hood if you have skills and you would look to see what's going on, or you would take it into an auto mechanic and then the auto mechanic would look at your car and get it fixed. But because people have thought that the anger and frustration, all these other feelings are normal, and they blame it on other people, they never do the investigation to look inward to figure out what's causing these feelings. So as long as your mind's experiencing these feelings, that means there's still pollution in your mind. And as long as you have pollution in your mind, you're making unwise decisions in your day-to-day life. There's certain decisions that you make that are unwise. And when you put those decisions out, it's going to produce unwholesome results for you. It's going to come back to you. This is the natural law of karma, of cause and effect, or action and result. And when you make unwise decisions, now you'll experience harmful things coming back to you. So as long as your mind's polluted, you're going to make a certain amount of unwise decisions. You're going to experience a certain amount of unwholesome results coming back to you. And now you can't experience peace and joy because you've got this bombardment of difficulties and struggles that are coming at you in your life. Whereas if you purify your mind through getting to enlightenment and your mind is awake, you will be making 100% wise decisions. And now you'll only be experiencing 100% wholesome karma. The only things you'll be experiencing is wholesome karma. And now your mind can be peaceful and joyful because you've eliminated the causes and conditions that are actually causing these discontent feelings. So essentially what you're doing on the path to enlightenment is you're becoming a better and better person. You're evolving to this higher consciousness. You're healing from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt ever again. That's what you're doing. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you will never experience painful mental feelings ever again. And this is a much better way to live life than in the unenlightened state. Because in the unenlightened state, you can only be happy if you get what you want, right? If my mom and dad does this, if my brothers and sisters do this, if my boss does this, if the weather is this, if I have this much money in my bank account, I have this type of house and this type of car, then I will be happy. So this is called conditional happiness. And that means your happiness is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. This is why some people are old and grumpy. Not everybody's old and grumpy, of course, but there's some people who are old and grumpy because they have all these expectations and they have all these wants and they can only be happy if all these things are fulfilled. But the likelihood of all those things being fulfilled, being true, is very unlikely, right? So their happiness is shrinking. So what the Buddha is teaching you to do is get rid of this conditional happiness where you can only be happy if you're getting what you want, and getting to a point where you have unconditional happiness, unconditioned joy, where there doesn't need to be any condition met. So your mind can be bright and cheerful and glad and uplifted at all times. And you can have harmonious relationships with everyone around you. And this is that better way of life that he taught. He didn't teach rules and commandments and rituals and ceremonies. He taught you how to train your mind, becoming this better and better person so you can enjoy more out of life. That's what essentially you're doing on this path. And that's why enlightenment is important, is because you would like to enjoy this life. You would like to enjoy the relationships that you have. You would like to enjoy the things that you're doing on a day-to-day basis, but you can't do that as long as you have craving, desire, attachment. Because with craving, desire, attachment, you can only enjoy things when you get what you want. And when you're not getting what you want, you don't enjoy it. So your mind is getting rid of all of that and being trained to the point where you can enjoy everything and anything, no matter what's going on.
And my last question is, I know your master practicing all this eightfold truths to want to achieve the arahant state. Arahant, that means they will know other back life again. They will back to the normal world again to have people. I wonder if you achieve the arahant state in the future,
okay,
would you come back to the world again?
So if somebody becomes an arahant, that means that they're an enlightened being. That's how they refer to an enlightened being during the lifetime of the Buddha, meaning they fully purified their mind of the 10 fetters, where today we just call this person an enlightened being. Once you get to enlightenment, you're not going to be reborn. This is something that people misunderstand. Sometimes they think that if you get enlightened, you're then making a choice of whether to come back or not. That's not actually true. If you get to enlightenment, you will not actually experience rebirth because the causes and conditions that produce rebirth have been eliminated from the mind. And an enlightened being doesn't say that they're enlightened. If somebody tells you that they're enlightened, right away you know that they're not enlightened, because an enlightened being isn't bragging or boastful or arrogant and going around and telling people that they're enlightened. So enlightened beings are going to be humble. Their mind's going to be completely peaceful and joyful. They're not going to be going around looking for people to admire them and bragging and boastful that they're enlightened. So if somebody comes up to you and is like, by the way, I'm enlightened, you know right away that they're not enlightened, right? So this type of individual who's enlightened, they are not going to experience rebirth. They're not going to come back into this world. What's important is that you focus on your enlightenment, but in order for you to get to enlightenment, you're going to need to be guided by an individual who has either attained enlightenment or very close to attaining enlightenment. If somebody hasn't actually attained enlightenment themselves, they would have a very difficult time ever guiding you to enlightenment. So you need to know enough about what enlightenment is to be able to determine whether somebody else is potentially enlightened or not. And that's what I share in the very first book of our book series. In chapter 3, I help students to be able to understand how to determine whether someone's enlightened or not enlightened. Because I know that I can only teach while I'm alive, but these books and these resources that I share, they're going to be around long after I die. So people will be able to determine whether or not somebody's enlightened or not. But you're not doing that in a judgmental way where you're looking down on the person or looking up to the person. You're just making it kind of obvious for yourself whether this person has potentially gotten to enlightenment, because you need to have confidence that the person who you're learning from is either enlightened or very close to it, because otherwise, why would you spend time and effort and energy to be able to learn that person's teachings? So for me, would not be interested in coming back into this world anymore. Not because what I'm experiencing now is difficult or struggles. I don't have any difficulties or any struggles in my life. All my relationships are harmonious. I don't experience any of these discontent feelings anymore. But I wouldn't say that I am enlightened. I wouldn't say it that way. But I can share with you that I don't experience anger and sadness and frustration and any of these feelings. It's been a very long time since I experienced any of those things. And for me, I wouldn't be interested in coming back into this world. But that's not a choice that you're making once you get to enlightenment. You're actually making that choice all the way to enlightenment, that as you're getting to enlightenment, you're not going to experience rebirth. Because in the unenlightened state, life can feel very miserable sometimes when you're having broken relationships and you're experiencing, maybe losing your job or things like this. They can feel very much like a struggle in the unenlightened state. But by the time you get to enlightenment, it's like, whoa, I can do this. This is fun. This is nice. But by the time you get to enlightenment, you already know that this is your last life. So it's essentially like you need to learn everything that you need to learn in this world because your mind's holding on to this world. That's why it keeps coming back over and over and over again. But by the time you purify your mind and you've trained your mind, you've learned everything here. There's nothing else to learn. You understand how this entire world functions. And now it's time to leave this world. And what happens next for an enlightened being, because that might be your next question, is once you get to enlightenment, what happens next? The Buddha leaves it as an undeclared teaching. He doesn't describe what does come next or what doesn't come next for an enlightened being, because his teachings aren't about an afterlife. His teachings are about getting to a peaceful and joyful life now in this life. It's not about what might come next. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're welcome. Yes, ma'am. I think you might need to turn the mic on.
So, I want to know about like reborn. How do you know? How did you see it, or how can you prove that you had a past lives?
Sure. So I never believed in the cycle of rebirth. I knew that the Buddha taught that as part of my understanding of the teachings of the Buddha at the time. I didn't understand the details of it, but I just understood he taught rebirth. And I never believed in it whatsoever. I just kind of set it aside and was like, well, if this rebirth thing is true, I'll find out at another time. And if this rebirth thing is true, I'm not interested in coming back anymore. So let me kind of figure out what his teachings are. So once I figured out what his teachings are, and as I was training my mind more and more, and the pollution was coming out of the mind, I started observing my past lives, and I started being able to see what was going on in these previous lives. The earliest memory I have started at the age of 8. And then throughout my life, at different stages of my life, I had various memories of past lives, but I didn't know what that was at the time. So I just kind of pushed it to the side. But in my mid 40s, I had multiple experiences where I started observing things that were going on in my past lives. And I started connecting all of these things that had happened all throughout my life and all the things that were happening at the age of around 44, 45. That's when things started to really kind of be put together within my own mind. So I independently verified the cycle of rebirth in all those 17 different ways that I put in chapter 105 of volume 11. But one of the primary things that allowed me to be able to see the truth about the cycle of rebirth is I observed my past lives. And I was able to see that very clearly of what was going on in those lives. And some people have that experience and some people don't. But even if you don't have that experience, there's multiple ways for you to independently verify the cycle of rebirth. But that's not something you usually do when you first get started. Because what's happened in the past, it's in the past. It doesn't matter right now. And what may or may not happen in the future, it's in the future. It hasn't happened right now. Right now, you're in this human state. Your mind experiences discontentedness, and you would like to be able to fix that. And if you focus on that as you progress in your journey, there'll come a time where you're ready to start looking at the cycle of rebirth and independently verifying it. And you'll see that there's a ton of evidence that will help you to be able to independently verify it for yourself. I gave one little example, like deja vu. Are you familiar with that term? Yeah. So that's a very common thing that a lot of people have experienced, but they tend to just push it to the side, or they will come up with other reasons why that is occurring. But that's one thing that a lot of people have experienced that helps you to be able to see, like, yeah, you've got memories in this mind from other places, things that didn't happen in this life. Those memories couldn't have gotten in there in any other way. It comes from a previous life. It's like a cardboard box. Like each one of your lives is like a cardboard box. And if you get to the end of this life and there's still contents in your cardboard box, even though the cardboard box, the mind dissolves, those contents need to go to a new cardboard box. And now that new cardboard box has these contents from the old box. And that's why people experience this memories of their previous lives. And that's the primary way that I knew that it was true, but there's other ways too. That's why I give 17 different criteria. Yes, ma'am. We have microphones up here.
Wait. Good morning, Master. Good morning, everyone. My English is not really well. I just can understand a little bit. I think this lesson is just focused on the most interesting topic is about nothing is impermanent. And this 2 days I have a really bad sleep because this is the first time I go abroad. I go with my boyfriend in Thailand 2 days ago, but he left me here and I just cannot contact him. And he doesn't answer my phone. And I just have a lot of anger and fear and anxiety, a lot of different emotion. I can't have the good sleep this day. And I also don't have the cash here. And yesterday I go to exchange money, and I go to the Chinese restaurant to exchange 2,000 bahts, and a stranger give me 1,000.
The microphone's impermanent too. You're going to need to press the button again. The batteries might have run out.
I come here and I wanted to know the wisdom and to let myself be peaceful. And just now you said nothing is impermanent. I think maybe I should accept this because we just got together 3 months and he just do something bad for me, and I just cannot forgive him. But if I still feel bad to him, I cannot go over it. And I have 8 days, I have 1 week to live here, and I cannot enjoy this journey in Chiang Mai. So I want to know how to make a good sleep tonight and to be peaceful this day. And also I want to know if nothing is impermanent, what's our purchasing for? What's our seek for? And if we are just focused on what we thought in our mind, is it a little selfish to any other? And how I can verify is the right decision is the right way to make decision? There's 3 questions. Thank you.
Okay, I would like to just take one at a time because I just do one thing at a time. So your first question was about how can you get to peace and joy tonight and sleep better tonight, right? So the teachings of the Buddha aren't plug and play. It's not immediate relief from something as significant as somebody that you came here with as a boyfriend and now they've left. Right? Like this is definitely craving, desire, attachment that's producing that stress and anxiety and the anger and frustration. But the idea that your mind is going to release that in the next few hours and allow you to sleep tonight, you can't guarantee that that's the case. This is where if you had been learning the teachings of the Buddha, say the last several years, and you've been training your mind, when this particular thing happened, it would be much easier for your mind to deal with. But considering that you haven't been training your mind on these teachings, now that this has happened, it's not like you're going to be able to implement something today that's going to now immediately fix this for you. Because your mind in this situation has a certain amount of craving where your mind is holding on. So it's not like it's not like taking a pill and then 30 minutes later you don't have a headache anymore. That's not the way the teachings of the Buddha are. But some things that I can recommend for you, at least to help, but it's just you shouldn't have the expectation that it's going to completely eliminate this from your mind is, were you here when we were doing the meditation this morning? Were you here when we did meditation this morning? No? Were you here this morning when we did meditation? Okay, you were here. Okay, because sometimes people come late, so I didn't know if you were here or not. So that meditation we did, that's what I recommend that you do 2 or 3 times a day. This is called breathing mindfulness meditation, where you're focused on the breath, and then whenever your mind moves off the breath, you cut it off and let it go. The goal here is not to eliminate your thoughts. The goal is to train your mind to let go, because that's what your mind doesn't know how to do. With craving, desire, attachment in the mind, every unenlightened mind, it's holding on and it's craving permanence. And what the Buddha is teaching you to do is how to train your mind to let go. So the breathing mindfulness meditation will help you with that. And that's something that you could be doing today in order to help you. But you shouldn't have the expectation that by tonight, you're going to be happy again. And that this is going to be completely out of your mind, because this is a pretty significant event for yourself. And this is something that you need to be able to train your mind over a period of time. So in this situation, Buddha isn't teaching you whether what your boyfriend did, or maybe ex-boyfriend by now, whether that was wise or unwise for him to leave you. That's not what the Buddha is teaching you. What he's teaching you is, why is your mind discontent in this situation? Well, it's discontent because it's holding on and it's craving permanence. And what you need to be able to do is train your mind to let go and realize that this person is not permanent in your life. And if they're choosing to go away from you, that's their choice. And you can see how this person has made decisions. And now you get to decide whether or not you would like to continue to be in a relationship with this person or not. Okay. So what was your second question?
If nothing is impermanent, what we are purchasing for, seek for,
What is purchasing for?
purchase for, what's our goal?
Oh, okay. What is our goal? So the Buddha didn't say nothing is permanent. That's something that people misunderstand. In fact, in this particular series of chapters, let me just go ahead to chapter 114 here. This is where the Buddha is teaching about conditioned objects, where he says, monks, there are these three characteristics that define the conditioned. What three? An arising is seen, a vanishing is seen, and an alteration is seen while it persists. And then he says, these are the three characteristics that define the conditioned. So he's talking about conditioned objects here, which are impermanent. They arise, they change, and then they fade away. But in this very next chapter, he's teaching about unconditioned objects. Monks, there are these three characteristics that define the unconditioned. No arising is seen, no vanishing is seen, and no alteration while it persists is seen. So there's something called unconditioned objects. Enlightenment is that way, that once you get to enlightenment, it is a permanent mental state. You will never again experience any anger and sadness or frustration because the mind is unconditioned. In the unenlightened state, your mind is conditioned. You have certain conditions in your mind that are causing feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. Those feelings arise, they change, and they fade away. They're conditioned feelings. But by the time you get to enlightenment, you're experiencing unconditioned mental qualities where the mind is always happy. It's always joyful. There's no condition that needs to be met in order for you to experience that happiness. So there's nothing that can happen that takes that away. That's what the Buddha is explaining here. So one of the big misunderstandings that people have is they think the Buddha taught nothing is permanent. That's actually not true. He taught that there's conditioned objects that are impermanent, and there's unconditioned objects, which are permanent. The unconditioned objects are enlightenment and the natural laws. These natural laws that the Buddha taught, those are permanent. That's why his teachings are just as applicable today as they were 2,500 years ago, because these natural laws haven't changed. People's memories and the books and what people think about his teachings, those are conditioned and those things have changed. But the natural laws themselves, they don't actually change. But everything in the material world around you is impermanent, meaning anything you can see, hear, smell, taste, anything that comes in contact with the body or any thoughts or ideas that go through the mind, this is all impermanent. So things are constantly changing in the world, but the mind holds on and it craves permanence, right? So your question is like, what's our purpose here, right? Your purpose is to cultivate wisdom so you can understand the natural laws, and now you can get to the point where your mind's completely peaceful and joyful, and you can enjoy your life. But as long as you don't understand the natural laws, you're living in a world that you don't understand. And now you'll struggle and you'll have difficulties in this world. If you've ever watched the news, or if you've ever heard about a certain event from one of your friends or family members, and you just say, I don't understand why they keep doing that. I just don't understand. It doesn't make sense to me. That's because you're living in a world that you don't understand. Like this situation with your boyfriend, you might not, I don't know, you might not understand why he's doing what he's doing, right? You might just be confused. That's because the mind doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. When you live in a world that you don't understand, you'll have struggles and difficulties. This is why when we were growing up as children, we didn't understand the natural law of gravity, and we struggled. We had difficulties. We fell down, we hit our head, we bumped our elbows, we broke our toys, and we cried and cried and cried because we lived in a world that we didn't understand. But slowly but surely, we gain wisdom of the natural law of gravity. And now we make better decisions. We tie our shoes tighter. We look at the surface of the sidewalk. We stopped being so giddy and bouncing around like a kid. And now we can climb ladders. We can ride bicycles. We can get on airplanes and fly all over the world because we fully awoke, meaning we fully cultivated wisdom about the natural law of gravity. Well, there's these other natural laws that are affecting you, whether you're aware of them or not. And when you're not aware of these natural laws, you will struggle and have difficulties. So that's what it means to awaken, is to cultivate wisdom about these natural laws. And that's your ultimate purpose. That's your ultimate goal in this life, is to be able to cultivate this wisdom. So now you can navigate the world peacefully and joyfully. You come here with your boyfriend. You plan to spend time with him. That's your goal. That's your objective. That's what you're thinking. But if you understand craving, desire, attachment, then you don't allow your mind to grab onto that and crave permanence, understanding that this person in your life is not permanent. And while it would be wonderful and you had intended to spend time with this boyfriend, if he chooses to go away, then so be it. Your mind can be peaceful and joyful, but you can't do that as long as you're craving permanence and holding on to this person. So when you lack wisdom of these natural laws and you don't understand how the world truly works, then that's where you'll struggle and have difficulties. And that's what the stress and the anxiety and all these feelings are, is the mind is showing you that, hey, I'm not awake here. I don't understand this world that I'm living in. So the ultimate goal is to cultivate this wisdom about this world, and now you can navigate it peacefully, and you can be joyful because you fully understand the world. Just like you do with the natural law of gravity, there's these other natural laws that you now need to be able to learn. Because growing up as a child, we learned how to clean this body, and now we do that every single day, right? But nobody taught you how to clean your mind. And there's these two different parts to this being. There's the physical body and there's the mind. And if you don't understand how to clean the mind, well, of course you experience stress and anxiety or frustration and anger in these certain situations because the mind is not cleaned up. It's not purified. So that's why now that you're an adult, you can make the choice to learn how to clean your mind. And that's something you can do while you're here, or you can do it when you go back home, because we have live stream and there's lots of resources for you to be able to learn. You had a third question, you said?
Yeah, I can understand what he thought, and maybe my spirit is not cleaning up. The third question is, he said I am emotional. Maybe it's the reason that he led me here. But I think I have the reason to judge him or blame him. But how can I verify what's the right decision? Who's right, who's wrong? And I don't know. Maybe it's my mind is not cleaning up, or I don't know.
It's best to not think about who's right and who's wrong, because that's looking at the world through black and white and through a black and white lens. Instead, just understand that he's making choices that he thinks is best for his life, and that's what he's choosing. And his choice at this point in time is to not spend time with you for whatever reason. And now you get to make the choices that are best for your life. And if he's making choices that are best for his life and you're making the choices that are best for your life, now you just create that kind of life that you would like to live. So it's not about what's right or wrong in these kinds of situations. I think it's unwise to come to a foreign country like this with someone and leave them without money. That is unwise, in my opinion. I wouldn't ever do that, because I have a certain amount of loving kindness and compassion in my mind for the people that I would go travel with and things like this. But the fact that he hasn't done that doesn't make him wrong, because as soon as we do that, then we start blaming this other person. Instead, you can learn some lessons here, that whenever you're experiencing difficulties and struggles, you need to look at the situation and cultivate wisdom. As you travel throughout the world, even when you're traveling with other people, I think one of the lessons that you can take away from this is make sure you have access to money, right? You should never go traveling in the world where all your money or your ability to support yourself is in somebody else's hands. You need to make sure that you have some access to money to be able to support yourself. And now that's a lesson that you've learned. Not that you have to be scared or fearful about this, but now for the rest of your life, whenever you travel, make sure you have money for yourself. Right? And there's other lessons that you can learn here too. So rather than sit around and think about who's right and who's wrong and blame him for what he's doing and all that kind of stuff, that doesn't help your life. What you need to do is cultivate wisdom. That was your second question, right? You need to cultivate wisdom. And blaming him or looking at all the reasons why he's wrong or all the things he did that were unwise, that doesn't help you cultivate wisdom because that's focused on him. What you need to do is focus on yourself. What decisions did I make that I could have made better so that in the future, if I'm in a similar situation, I won't experience these same results? Because now if you cultivate that wisdom, you'll make different decisions next time and you'll experience better results. Whereas if you focus on him and where he's wrong or where he's done something that you disagree with, this doesn't help you cultivate the needed wisdom to make better decisions for next time, right? Because you're going to be in these similar situations where you're traveling with people and you've got to figure out what were all the decisions that I made that led me to this situation. And this is what you can do with every single situation where you're experiencing unwholesome results is rather than look at the other person, look at yourself and figure out what were the decisions that I can make differently next time to ensure that this type of thing doesn't happen. Because somebody can easily leave from your life like this and you can't control that. But you can control the decisions that you make in terms of your finances, in terms of your planning of traveling and all these other things. And that's what you would like to focus on. And that's what's going to help you throughout the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so I usually teach in this particular class just up to about 10:30 or so, and then we kind of end class from there, where in the evenings on Saturday night at 9 p.m., I teach the same class from home, and I go through 10 chapters, and I make sure that we explore all of these. And those students are typically been learning with me for a long time, so we actually don't even do meditation as part of that program on Sunday or on Saturday evenings, because those people typically already have a meditation practice. So if you're interested in exploring more of these chapters, it would be tonight online at 9 p.m. That's where I'm going to be doing that. If you would like to learn more here at the temple, today at 1 to 4, I'm going to be doing an introduction to the teachings of the Buddha. Tomorrow, we're going to be in our group learning program. We're going to be discussing chapter 13 from our very first book. This is where I'm going to teach you how to identify your cravings, desires, attachments that are in your mind and almost surgically remove them from the mind. And there's also meditation tomorrow at 6:30, synced up with the Sunday night walking market. If you'd like to just come here and do some meditation, you can come here at 6:30 and do some meditation. I usually do a little bit of a question and answer period as well. So there's lots of opportunities for you to learn here. Rather than go through all of those, I'll just suggest to you to look at our bulletin board over there. You'll see all the options. And then also our website. If you look at buddhadailywisdom.com, you'll see an events calendar, and you can see all the different learning opportunities available to you, both here in Thailand, but also through our live streaming and all that other stuff. So whatever you choose to do today, have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Okay? Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.